Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, empowering the public to rid Jamaica of crime. And in the second watch, the pound is losing its weight. Our social media question we ask: as a regular citizen, what would be your first instinct to do if you saw a crime being perpetrated? Please share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's our quote.
Good morning. It's Ella Studio with Anthony D.
Hello, Dr. Toussaint.
Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Toussaint.
Hello, Dr. Blair and Ella. How are you doing?
Say that again, Dr. Toussaint.
Just ask how are you ladies doing?
Oh, we're doing good.
Okay.
Are you, Anthony D?
I'm good. Let's see what the I quote is for today.
So the I quote for today is an inspirational quote. When you have a dream, you've got to grab it and never let go. Carol Burnett.
Oh, ladies, speaking about dreams, which would you say you do more of? Daydreaming or night dreaming?
Say that again.
Speaking about dreams,
Uh-huh.
which would you say you do more of? Daydreaming or night dreaming?
Wow.
Oh,
How about you, Ella?
Good question.
yeah.
What did Ella say?
I'll say night. I'm gonna say night.
Let's say night.
Why
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
days because I dream of what I want to do and do it. In the day. Dream
Yeah,
slash think.
Yeah, as the quote says, you grab it. You grab it.
I should grab it.
So what you do with yours, Ella?
Actually, sometimes they're so profound. I actually get up and I go on my voice record and I record whatever I saw in the dream
Glory.
and so on. So
Wow.
that's what I've been doing.
Hey.
Wow.
Yes.
One grabs it and one records it. Profound.
Yes.
The first watch will be back after this break.
8884 Gastro. That's the only number you need to know. 8884 Gastro. Safety first, that's for sure. We feel it right. So when you're ready to light, day or night, the blue flame burns bright. So when you time you need cooking gas, call Gastro and you get it fast. 8884 Gastro. Get attached to the wall, Gastro, the gas professionals.
I've got love in my heart and I'm feeling blessed.
Another World of Worship Wednesday is coming your way in Zada Live, 1 to 5 September 28th. packed with worship and information. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15, we feature Chris Tomlin as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore top places to visit in Portland. All this and more will come your way inside Alive 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. This World of Worship Wednesday, September 28th, with yours truly, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
Give him praise, give him praise. Huh.
Rise with the sun and face the day with some Lasco instant chocolate. Pull a pack, stir it up. Hot or cold, enjoy the chocolatey goodness any time of the day and unleash instant smiles, instant happiness.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, criminals have become more brazen. They no longer hide behind walls or do their deeds under the cover of darkness. Some do not even seem to care whether or not security forces are across the road. In fact, a recent newspaper headline stated, and I quote, "Attackers kill man in front of cops." End of quote. So they prey upon everyone and anyone, causing collateral damage, thus turning the average innocent citizen into a victim. How can we, the untrained citizen, protect ourselves? How can the public be more empowered to reduce the crime rate? Answer these and other related questions. We have online Mr. Robert Finzi-Smith, security consultant, and Ms. Mikkel Jackson, executive director, Jamaicans for Justice. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you both with us. Let me begin with, well, I'm just asking a general question for both of you, really, beginning with Ms. Jackson. Apart from the fact that the crime rate in Jamaica is so high, what are your other concerns about crime in Jamaica today? Ms. Jackson.
I mean, the concerns, I believe we share it with the general public. It is high, but I think outside of the statistics, I think it's also how close to home it is for many of us, and the types of crime that we see happening as well. So we're aware of the gun violence in the country. But when we look at the high levels of domestic disputes as well, at the community levels and within the homes, it really does send the message that more needs to be done in terms of how we resolve conflict, how we have interaction with each other. And as the topic here is really looking at what can we do as citizens of Jamaica to play our role within the context of reducing crime, that is safely for us to do so and within the confines of the law.
Yeah, Mr. Finzi-Smith, your thoughts on that? Apart from the crime
I
rate.
was told something once in training. There's nothing in the world you cannot do as long as you're willing to live with the consequences. I think the problem in this country is that there's a distinct lack of consequences. So the faster we start applying the laws we have across the board, and we start realizing that if you ignore what's happening to your neighbor, the next stop will be your door. Then we can start down the trail of reducing the incident. because you have this thing in Jamaica where they say inform of the dead.
Yeah.
So people see stuff happening and ignore it totally
Yeah.
because it don't, as far as they're concerned, it doesn't concern them. Old adage says, ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee.
Well, what therefore are your recommendations, Miss Jackson and then Mr. Finley Smith?
Our recommendations really it spans both citizen involvement, but the citizens also being empowered by the state. And I'm going to explain what I mean in short order. When you have high levels of crime, and speaking as a female as well, one needs to start examining how can I protect myself in the context of gun violence, high levels of rape and sexual assault, and so on. And I think there's some legal ambiguities that the Parliament would also need to address. We've heard the conversation about whether or not it is legally permissible, for example, to be utilized in pepper spray, mace, and versus taser guns. And, we have also looked at the legislation from a JFJ perspective ourselves, specifically the Offensive Weapons Act, to look at what that legal definition is in terms of what is an offensive weapon. And from our gleaning of the law, it seems as if you're able to arm yourself with pepper spray, for example, as a non-lethal weapon. I think the government needs to settle this through the legislation and make the necessary amendments so citizens are very clear. The circumstances around self-defense, what you can do to protect yourself, because some of them, Mr. Finley, know more than I do in terms of the cost implications for other things such as security and getting, what you call that one that you can, the panic button is another one you can look at. But beyond the citizens, JFJ also look at how the state can really put home in the community level some of the restorative justice initiatives that they have, conflict resolution. Because I go back to the point that a number of the incidents that we see resulting in the death of people really speaks to the lack of conflict resolution. The PAL program in school, how do we scale up some of these interventions? And my colleague also mentioned it. I think we also have to be outraged about how we look out for our neighbor, and not because we're not necessarily directly impacted by the different types of crime. So we can't be a silent bystander anymore. We have to utilize the law and the emergency numbers to the JCF and report incidents of crimes when we do see them happening. So it really does take the village, and I really call on parliamentarians as well in their respective constituencies to really educate the people about some of these practical mechanisms that they can utilize to protect themselves.
Yeah, before I bring back on Mr. Finley Smith, for the record, could you clarify the legal ramifications behind having or using the pepper spray and the taser? What does the law really state on that?
Okay, so in the
Ms.
Offensive
Jackson.
Weapons Prohibition Act, when you look at Section 2 and the definition of offensive weapon, it really does not include pepper spray or mace. So the law is silent on whether or not it is legal. And by the fact that it has not defined it as an offensive weapon, it means possibly that as citizens we can actually utilize it. On the other hand, though, and by the way, let me clarify, though the definition of it is not in Section 2, and by default it means that you can utilize it, you can't legally bring it into the island. So that's another conversation. In terms of tasers, tasers are not legal from what we have gleaned at JFJ, but I stand corrected if my colleague knows differently.
All right, we're going to hear from Mr. Finley Smith in a while. We're up on a break. Hold those thoughts. We'll be right back.
Get better coverage for yourself and your family as low as $800 a month. The time by JN Life Vest from JN Life Insurance is
$7.15.
The first sound they make is to simply let the world know they're here. And then it's our duty to help them show the world why they're here in the first place.
Give them every advantage with the Guardian Achiever, a plan that provides for their educational dreams and protects their health and life in the process. For more information, call 888-4LIFE to speak to an advisor or visit myguardiangroup.com.
I say yeah, say cheese. Say cheese and keep on smiling. Oh, say cheese. Say cheese and keep on smiling. So much joy you bring everywhere you gonna, people have to smile. Say cheese, yes, say cheese. I just love you bring everywhere you gonna, people have to smile. Just say cheese and keep smiling.
Nothing creates a smile like cheese. Happy Cheese Month, Jamaica, from Tasty Cheese.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and in this the first watch, we are seeking to empower the public in regards to ridding Jamaica of crime as much as possible. And in so doing, we have online Ms. Michael Jackson, Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, and Mr. Robert Finzi Smith, Security Consultant. Mr. Smith, you wanted, I'm sure, to chime in.
I was amused because the point my learned colleague made has been a source of amusement for years for me. Somebody, when they were revising the Offensive Weapons Act, somehow left off pepper spray and mace because it was there before. But now, possession of it is not deemed to be a crime as long as they don't catch you purchasing it.
So what about the use of it? What about the use of it? Is that okay in law, as far as you know?
It is silent. It can be, as in anything, it can be said to be against the law based on how you use it. There's a section of the law that speaks to use of a noxious substance, which pepper spray and mace can be easily fitted into if you do so with malice aforethought. If you do so in self-defense, that's a completely different area. But the fact that that very Jamaican, if I might be so bold, conundrum, as in possession is not deemed to be illegal, but how you acquired it is. So it again, in Jamaica we have a thing where we make laws that seem to invite people to circumvent them or to do things that are not necessarily legal to get stuff. Because if it was open for people to purchase as a self-defense purpose, then people wouldn't be breaking the law to acquire it. But there are dangers to it. For instance, if one walks into a nightclub or any other place with pepper spray in their possession and takes offense to someone doing something to them or about them, and they disperse that pepper spray with the central air conditioning that are in most of these places, everyone
will be affected
within breathing distance is going to be affected. It's going to be rapidly dispersed. And you have people with conditions that pepper spray being administered in their vicinity is a hospitalization at best. Some people who have bad cases of asthma can die. So there are a number of ways to look at it.
Since on that, Mr. Finzi, lest I forget, what about the carrying of knives, cutlass?
Again, you have people telling you carrying knives to peel orange. But I believe the law speaks to the type of knife, the length, whether or not it is able to be clasped, as in folded, or is it just open and people wrap it up in newspaper or whatever. But knives of a certain length and thing are almost immediately deemed to be offensive. It comes back to the discretion of the officer and the circumstances.
So what we're going to use then? I mean, based on what, all of these things seem to be outlawed, or there
Have
is
you ever
much
seen collapsible
ambiguity.
baton? Have you ever seen collapsible baton?
No, what's that?
It depends on what size you purchase. They're approximately, they can be anything from 6 inches to just short of 8 inches in length folded. They retract into themselves. When you whip it with your wrist in a certain way, what is a 6-inch metal encased with rubber as a grip suddenly becomes in excess of 24, sometimes 30 inches of metal baton with a tip. If you administer that to certain nerve endings on the leg, arm, elbow, any place like that, you will have someone incapacitated.
Yeah. Miss Jackson, what are your thoughts? Really desire in some quarters that the entire population be armed, firearmed.
The organization has not taken a formal stance on the issue of one's right or ability to legally own firearms. But I will say this from a personal perspective, that I don't think it's a feasible thing to say at all, because I think we may do more harm than good in the long run.
More than what's happening now, more than what's going on now with over 1,000 murders every year.
And Mr. Finter Smith outlined some of the things we have to look at in terms of, the right to self-defense and, how subjective your view of the situation may be versus the objectivity if the matter were to go to court. And I think we have to also look at that. How are we exactly preparing persons for these things? And that's why I said, as much as we want to talk about citizen empowerment, which I believe in, I think we have to be looking at the different state agencies to help us to get to that state of empowerment. Mr. Finzer Smith, I was learning while he was speaking about the baton that is folded, for example. What mechanisms can we put in place for people to learn some of these things? What mechanism can we put in place to learn how to de-escalate situations? Because while the crime rate is high and a number of it is included around gang involvement and so on, a number of other levels of crime is also around domestic dispute. So I genuinely do believe that you have to be looking at the circumstances of crime, the types of crime that exist, and how the different responses from citizens could very well be. And it may not necessarily lead to everyone necessarily needing to be armed, so to speak. Certainly not all of us need to be having a firearm, because the consequences can be far too grave, I believe as well.
Interesting. Mr. Finzer Smith, what's your take on that?
I agree. I can go deeper. Jamaicans are known to be aggressive naturally. Our speech, our very simple way of expressing ourselves to each other, comes across as though a friendly argument can sound like it's a war. Let me give you an example. Have you watched taxi men bouncing around for passengers and the conflicts that occur as a result of who passenger that is? I've seen taxi men reach into their cars to come out with half a machete to concretize their claim. No,
I remember the one month ago, Mr. Finzer Smith?
Oh, yeah, very clearly. No,
those were taxi men in Mobile,
No, they were actually two licensed firearm holders. No, you put a firearm legally in the hands of a naturally aggressive and not too conscious person who seems to feel that he has now become the deity. That if
But
I
you know,
want God,
why in other countries that have it, it seems to work, and you don't have
because other countries,
okay, Carol type of image.
Other countries, well, the United States as prime example, the right to bear arms. Now, how many mass shootings have you seen in the United States? You can't begin to count. And this is because of people having access to weaponry. And they use the access to weaponry to compound their source of discontent.
Mm-hmm.
If you think your death rate by, because again I have an issue. In Jamaica, crime is measured by gun violence. Whereas a lot of what contributes to crime in Jamaica is done with more of a pen than a gun.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things we don't consider as crime in Jamaica, which leads and almost cultural reflection of what we see as crime. I'll give an example. A lady who is a very good church lady, always praying for you and thanking everybody in the office, comes to work very early because she printing our hymnal and our church program on the copier using reams of paper. You have robbed the institution for which you are employed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not crime. I'm doing the Lord's work.
Mm-hmm.
You have your child going to do an exam and they need pencils. Why would I go down to the store and buy? What stationery cabinet?
But as
that crime?
Yeah, as we wrap as we wrap this first watch though, Miss Jackson, it just seems as if therefore we are hopeless. So some people might argue. I mean, what do? We cannot use the mace. We cannot use the pepper spray. We shouldn't have the knife or the cutlass. We won't have the guns in our possession as regular citizens. What do we do?
I've had this conversation about hopelessness, and I believe in Jamaica, and I believe that we can get there. I did indicate earlier, and Mr. Smith expounded that where the law is silent, as citizens, we can be empowered to know those things, act accordingly, while championing our government to make the necessary changes. And it starts with programs like these, educating. So now that persons know that there are these gaps and Parliament needs to address it, how can we then encourage Parliament and tell them that they must do it? I genuinely believe as well that the conflict resolution strategies from the Ministry of Justice, it has to be such an excellent initiative. I think it has to go out in the communities. We have to educate people. I see JCF doing a number of communication activities. I really want them to broaden the scope of it, work with civil society. I'm hoping that Mr. Finter Smith and his expertise as well can also lend a role, because I think when we come together collectively, we can see how we can equip ourselves to de-escalate situations significantly going forward. So I don't believe all is lost, but I think we have to be very practical and get to that stage of a culture change. As Mr. Finter Smith said, we're violent as a society, we're easily angered. I went to Grenada and the people there were so laid back. And I was saying, boy, this was in Jamaica, how it would have behaved differently. I was in KFC and they were so laid back while they waited. So I think we have to get to that value shift in the country, that attitudinal change, very important, I believe. And I think it is quite possible when we look at all of the variables.
Okay. Believe it or not, lady and gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. Have a safe day.
Thank
you too.
Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
to Jane Bank today to find out about achieving your own sweet home in 30 days. The time by Jane Bank Mortgage is
7:30 and a half.
National Bill up the nation. Nice baked goods for everybody. Nothing no sweet me like bun and cheese. National make your bill with the family. We love cheesy folks and mommy prefer crackers and tea. And we support all one chicken man with the hard bread, you know, giant brand. Serving the people of Jamaica with wholesome food to help you stay strong. Yeah, grab your national bag, original, truly Jamaican. Something for all occasion. Good for your breakfast, lunch or snack. Grab your national bag, original, truly Jamaican. Best quality, 70 years strong. National Bill of the Nation. National Baking Company, baked with pride since 52.
Tired of the high interest rates and the whole heap of loan payments every month? Take a debt consolidation loan from AIM to pay credit card bills and all other high interest rate loans from other institutions. Make one low monthly payment to AIM and take home some extra money in your pocket. That's financial freedom. One loan, one low payment, more money in your pocket. Call AIM today to lower your loan payment. And remember, you won't find a better deal elsewhere. Guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, let's look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, Cuba without electricity after Hurricane hammers power grid. Also in the Gleaner, Jamaicans among speakers for major artificial intelligence conference. In the Loop News, Messi scores twice as Argentina beat Jamaica 3-0. Oh my. And then Ian powers up to a Category 4 hurricane as it nears Florida. Our prayers are with those living in that region. In the Observer, global sugar shortage. Some manufacturers cutting back to keep products on shelves. And then finally, another warning. PM again cautions against building in flood-prone areas. May we all heed the warning. Those are some of the major stories in our newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. As a regular citizen, what would be your first instinct to do if you saw a crime being perpetrated? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
I'm Tammy.
I'm Wayne.
And we are the Mitchells. Our life is a busy vibe. So Flow Yarden Road is made for our vibe.
Power your everywhere vibe with Yarden Road and get up to 150 megabits per second fiber fast internet at home and fully loaded mobile with unlimited social and YouTube data. Anywhere talking text plus gigs and gigs of any use data. All for a special offer of $4,999 plus GCT. Yarden Road is for the way you live. Flow, Jamaica's network. Visit discoverflow.co. Conditions apply.
You know what I count, yeah. Hey, me count, you count. Census say all of we count. Hey, you count, me count. Census say all of we count. Hey, we are gonna start from east. Hey, then we reach our west. Hey, the process easy. Yo, please don't just guess what.
Census 2022.
The Jamaican census will be conducted between September and December 2022.
You count, me count.
Every day I get bigger, every day I get better. I'm a star in that shimmer. Watch me grow, I'm a winner, yeah. Every step that I take, oh yeah. Feeling great cause I'm learning, yeah. I'm a star in that shimmer. Watch me grow, I'm a winner, yeah. La 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 la. Watch me grow with a lot of plus.
Help support the
their mental development at this important stage with a unique combination of nutrients from Lacta Plus. This product is not intended to be a substitute for breast milk.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join, is it Ella or Dr. Blair? Or Ella Blair or Blair Ella for a look at our Facebook and YouTube and WhatsApp friends answer today's question. As a regular citizen, what would be your first instinct to do if you saw a crime being perpetrated? Either one of you can respond.
Well, it is I. It is Nadine.
All right.
And has left the building.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a few responses here. Let me play this one from Sonia.
Good morning to the Morning Watch panel. I think this is we are just a little island, and I believe this is totally wrong. We don't need to give everybody license gun. Look at the crime and violence in Jamaica. Just look on it. As the crime and violence is getting out of hand, we don't need to think about that to give people license firearm for do what to kill people. No, we don't need that. Jamaica don't need that. Jamaica need peace and love.
All right,
and
so that's a comment from First Watch. Carol, in response to the question, says, hide. So what would you do? And regular citizen meaning as against, you're not a police officer, you're not a soldier, you're not.
Right.
So her response is she would hide, record it, and send it to the police and add the location. All right, Carol. Then Marcia said, if the person committing the crime don't see me, I would call the police, but with fear for my life, they see me, I don't know what to do. Wow. And that is usually the challenge.
Yeah. Okay, those are the responses. Thank you so very much, those who responded in one way or the other. It really is a concern, though, Nadine. Serious concern. All right, as we segue into the second watch, the British pound is losing weight. Weight as in value, sliding to an all-time low. So what are the reasons for this reality? And what does this mean for the economies of the world, including Jamaica's? To discuss these issues, we have joining us this morning Mr. John Mahfood, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and Dr. Andre Horton, economist. Good morning to you both.
All right,
Okay, do we have?
All right, we have Andre on now. Go ahead, please.
Okay, Dr. Horton.
Yes, hi, how are you? Morning.
I'm well. How are you, sir?
Yes, slowly learning, coping with the weather and the global economic conditions. Morning to your listeners as well.
Yes, good to have you on with us. We are hoping to be joined by Mr. John Mahfood momentarily. Yes, we're talking about the pound losing its weight in the UK. What is your understanding of why the pound has been losing its weight, Mr. Horton, Dr. Horton?
Yeah, there's a multiplicity of factors, there are many factors that have been contributing to.
Dr. Horton, are you there? Still there?
We seem to have lost him. Can you continue? Yes.
Okay, all right. So listeners, we're talking about the pound losing its weight. Of course, the British pound, and we are seeking to have a discussion on the matter with Dr. Andre Horton. We just lost him a while ago. And Mr. John Mahfood, President of Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Because, of course, you'd realize and you'd have heard that recently the
He's back on.
pound, the
Yes, Ben.
pound,
Can you hear me now?
yes, yes, Dr. Horton.
Yeah. Yes, the UK has been volatile for quite some time now with their whole approach to Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've seen is that the change of prime minister now has resulted in change of policy, and the type of policy that the new prime minister Liz Truss is now proposing reminds us of what occurred with Ronald Reagan back in 1980. So let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
When economies are in depression, governments try to mobilize economic activity with excess spending. Now, this excess spending must be financed in some way. How does government finance spending? Government finance spending by collecting more taxes or through borrowing. But what Liz Truss also proposed was an extension in spending, but also a minimization in taxes, both of which will lead to a decline in what we call national savings. And if there's a decline in national savings, it means that the country has to borrow the excess from abroad. Now, it is not only the fact that she's minimizing taxes, but the avenues through which they are trying to minimize tax is really through the corporate side, where they are providing tax relief to large companies and to corporate giants. So it's not a benevolent policy that is going to the lower echelons of society who have the spending power to really purchase more from your business. Now, so that's one angle that has led to skepticism in the financial sector, and a lot of investors have been pulling their monies out of the UK and investing them into more. You see, the thing is, the United States dollar is a more globally traded currency than the British.
Right.
The British pound might have higher value, but the US represents the global reserve. So when you have America increasing interest rates by 2%, 1%, whatever the case may be, then that will attract foreign capital. So a lot of people say, okay, I'm pulling out my money out of Jamaica, I'm pulling out my money here, and I'm taking it to invest in America. Because the idea is that you want to invest, one, in a more stable currency, and two, you want a higher rate of return. So all these factors have been contributing to the resonance of a depreciating dollar that we have been seeing over the last.
So, right. So I'm happy you mentioned that, because how recent was this? Is it as as soon as Miss Truss came into power that this slide took place? Was it taking place before that?
Yeah, basically the landslide. So there was some expectation of slippage over the last 2 years, but because of the powerhouse that England is and the different tentacles that they have in various economies across the world, this has been keeping the value of their currency afloat. Now, with Liz Truss's policies, it is illustrating to investors that the speculation that they were witnessing prior to her coming in was really true. So that was the camel that really broke, or the straw that broke the camel's back. So the global geopolitical atmosphere now is really looking, because investment in this time is very skeptical because of what we have been experiencing over the last 2 or 3 years. And if we're going back to the late 70s, 80s, they're looking at how Margaret Thatcher managed the economy. She was the one with Milton Friedman who really publicized and broadcasted this interest rate policy from the monetary policy side, from the central bank. And in America, what ensued after Ronald Reagan minimized national savings was a decline in investment. And it's funny enough that this is happening, because this was the topic in my macroeconomics class last week.
Tell you what, Tell you what though, Doc, we're up on a break, right? Hold that thought. We are eager to hear what you have to say. We'll be right back after this break.
Okay.
I've got love in my heart and I'm feeling blessed.
Another World of Worship Wednesday is coming your way in Zada Live, 1 to 5, September 28th. Packed with worship and information. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 we feature Chris Tomlin as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore top places to visit in Portland. All this and more will come your way in Zada Live, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. This World of Worship Wednesday, September 28th, with yours truly, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
Give him praise, give him praise.
Yeah, churches cross Jamaica. Run, come.
Hey, guess what? Love 101's ABC is back. Yes. The Alive Bible Challenge 3.0. Are you ready? It's time to send us your entry to be a challenger in season 3. And who knows, you might be the season's champion. Season 1 and 2 were great, and we promise a greater season 3. Great prizes and surprises. Send us your name and contact information along with the name of your church to producer2@love101.org or via WhatsApp to 876-424-3261. That's 876-424-3261. Also calling all churches from near or far to send us their top Bible scholars who they think can challenge others all the way to victory. Listen, it's going to be exciting. Send in your entry today and let's get the ball rolling. It's your ABC on LOVE. Yeah! The Alive Bible Challenge 3.0 is here. Ready, set, go!
Okay, ready, set, go. We are into the second half of the second watch, and we are discussing the topic, the pound, that is the British pound, is losing its weight. And to discuss this, we have online Dr. Andre Horton, economist. Before the break, Dr. Horton, you were telling us about your economics class and relevance to this topic.
Yes, the idea is that now, in order for countries to invest and expand economic activity without borrowing, then there must be some resonance of national savings. Now, from the government point of view, if they are going to increase spending, then this spending must be coming from somewhere. It has to be coming from either the taxes they collect or it's coming from them borrowing. In this time,
Dr. Horton is off again.
Yes.
All right. Tell you what, listeners, we'll take another break and sort things out and be right back.
I've got love in my heart and I'm feeling blessed.
Another World of Worship Wednesday is coming your way in Zada Live, 1 to 5, September 28th. Packed with worship and information. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 we feature Chris Tomlin as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore top places to visit in Portland. All this and more will come your way in Zada Live, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. This World of Worship Wednesday, September 28th, with yours truly, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
Give him praise, give him praise.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. We apologize for the technical glitches we have been having. I am hoping that Dr. Horton is back on with us, live and direct. Dr. Horton?
Yeah, man, I'm here. The fact is, no countries don't want to be borrowing too much. Okay? Countries want to be in a position where they are moving towards sustainability, as well as their policies are looking to expand industries. If their policies are not expanding industries, then these policies are not going to favor these modern investors because they understand the concept of blue chip, they understand the concept of sustainability, and now your policies have to be moving in that way. It's not just about pleasing the electorate or pleasing your investors or your backers again with government policy. So this serves as a lesson to a lot of our aspirational leaders here in Jamaica who are looking to be in the public's favor. Your policy stance cannot just be favoring the people who you think are funding your campaign, who are big businesses, and you're giving them large tax breaks. It's about creating balanced growth path for your economy. So politics cannot trump economics in these troubled times. Economics has to play an important role. And we can go as far back as the 1930s when we're looking at the Great Depression. It was Keynes who proposed that government intervene through spending. And at the same time, they would stimulate economic activity. So it's something similar that is taking place now. We have to just understand the difference and then use those idiosyncrasies to our advantage rather than to our disadvantage.
Some people may say, Doctor, that it sounds as if you're throwing words there. But wouldn't persons argue that these are some of the real tough decisions that leaders have to make from time to time? And the short term negative effects, right? Would pale into insignificance when you realize the long term positive effects. How do you respond to that?
Exactly. A lot of Jamaicans are myopic, So they tend to be one-sided in their approach. So if the person you like does this, then it's fine. If the person that they don't like does this, then it's not fine. Economic management has gone past that. Economic management is really prudent. It's like understanding where you are as a people and what is necessary to move that nation of people forward. It's not just popularity or statements or utterances that go in favor with what you think is best. It's about what is necessary to minimize the debt. Listen, Jamaica since 2019, our GDP per capita was $5,300. That's the amount per person. GDP per capita has fallen from $5,300 per person in 2019 to
that's gross domestic product.
$800 per person now.
Yes.
So it has fallen by $500. Imagine each Jamaican producing 500 US or 10% less than they were producing in 2019. It's a big issue. So these are the things that as a government we need to look at how we address them before it gets down to $4,000 and we are worse than Haiti. So it's a real scenario that we're facing, so we can wake up and we can chat and we love the popularity and hey and whatever the case may be. But until we strategically approach our economic management in a meaningful way, then Jamaica will continue and Jamaicans will continue to be worse off in their bliss and glory. So we have to choose.
Yeah, we're sorry that we have not been able to touch base as planned with Mr. John Mahfood. But I need to ask you, seeing that he's not here, how do you think what's happening in Britain will the British pound will affect manufacturing and exports?
Listen, it's not just what is happening in Britain, it's what is happening globally. Globally, the world was headed into a recession even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Germany saw a reduction in demand for their automobiles. Singapore had problems producing their microchips. China had problems with the Evergrande and the housing exploits that they embarked upon domestically. And this has been having an impact on their pension funds. And these events in Europe and Asia, as well as Donald Trump imposed 50 billion worth of tariffs on America, on China. China imposed about 50 billion tariffs, and so on. So these events were pushing the world towards that, but we just didn't realize it because the COVID-19 pandemic was overshadowing everything. Now, what does this mean? This means that while the smoke clears for the COVID-19 pandemic, we are now realizing what a devastating world now that we're living in. And Jamaica, we have to be quick and flexible in our response. We now have to be looking at the types of goods and services that we produce and how we can create value for our people, how we can create value from the sort of goods and services that we produce. It's very important that we do so, because now we find ourselves in a sticky position where GDP per capita GDP is headed downward. Our total GDP moved from upwards of 15.5 billion in 2019 to 13.8 billion in 2021. When I asked my students to look it up and they said 13.8, I couldn't believe the Jamaican GDP has lost $2 billion US since 2019 out of 15. So we understand everything that's happening now is just talk. It's just a talk shop, and Jamaica cannot move into the future as a talk shop.
The person on the ground, I don't want to say average person, but the individual on the ground, the everyday man and woman, what would you suggest, recommend now in light of all that is happening globally and with the British pound?
Time we speak about economic management and we speak about how an economy is supposed to move forward, we're speaking about the difference between micro and macroeconomic.
Right.
Now, microeconomic, which is what I do not teach, deals with the individual behavior and how they make their rational decisions on a day-to-day basis. Whilst I might be able to give a person advice, which is make sure that you budget what you're spending, make sure that you spend on important things, make sure a management of a country is not up to the individual consumer. It is up to all three economic agents, and I listed three of them. One is the household, which is each of us in our household. Two are the firms, they are economic agents, and three is the government, who is responsible for administering prudent macroeconomic policies that will facilitate the gradual development of their country. We cannot leave this up to the individual.
But Dr. Horton, in the interim, what should the individual do in his or her household? What are your recommendations?
What them spending?
Say it again. What
I specialize in is macroeconomic application, which has to do with the broader macroeconomic. And the individual in England right now, you can tell him a million things what to do, But if the overall macroeconomic is adverse, then it will have a broad. You know what a young lady from England called me and told me yesterday? That she's a nurse and she worked 45,000. And in America, each nurse was working 70,000. She was using the exchange rate to equalize what she was working in pounds to what somebody else was working in the US, so now she don't have to move. But now, 45 pounds is relatively equal to 45 US. So now, she's generally contemplating to move. And this is a decision that the individual faces, but it is as a result of the overarching macroeconomic conditions that's why the individual is facing these circumstances. And that is why I am imploring to Jamaicans to understand the difference between micro and macroeconomic. And I am a macroeconomic specialist.
You're a macroeconomics man. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Horton, for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time and your thoughts on the topic.
Thank you.
Have a productive day.
All right. Have a great morning.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. Information on how to get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596 to 7. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, reminding you to be purposeful, faithful, thankful, and of course, watchful as I hand you back to Love in the Morning with Nadine Blair.
The NHF is here for you, helping Jamaican residents pay less for medication with the NHF card. The time by the National Health Fund is
8:01.